it's Anna from the Deseronto Public Library. I am here with Mike Savage, and we are, number one, advertising his book because it's awesome. This is Hearts of Men. He is local. And so I'm going to be... Hi! Hi, it's Anna from the Deseronto Public Library. I am here with Mike Savage, and we are, number one, advertising his book because it's awesome. This is Hearts of Men. He is local. And so I'm going to be asking him some questions, and I'm really excited. So, and I even put little bookmarks, as you can see. Haha. Those are my favorite parts, so I just bookmarked them. Anyway, so very simple questions. I'm going to go through them. If you guys have anything to ask, you can put them in the comments or whatnot, like our videos, all of that stuff. So hi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it.
I love this library.
Yes, me too.
It's very quaint.
It is.
It's very homey.
It is.
I love this section.
And we really appreciate you coming in and supporting us as well. So thank you.
It is my
very
pleasure.
Much. So there's about 19 to 20 questions on here, and I'm just going to just get right into it. It says, please tell me about yourself, anything you want. So I know a little bit that you do work construction as well. So anything about yourself that you want to share.
I have a construction company I've had since 2011. Awesome. My experience goes back to about 1998, 99. I've definitely strived to have the company for a long time. It's something I worked towards. I didn't just fall into. So I absolutely love it with passion. As I get older, I just turned 40. I'm starting to feel it a little more in my body. So anytime I can write instead of work on a construction site is kind of a nice hobby and a nice getaway for me. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also creative. So
it's a creative outlet that isn't so physical, which is nice. So I get to balance. I get to use my my brawn on one hand and my creative juices on the other. And I guess maybe I could tell you a little bit about the book and how that came about, because it's a little bit linked to the construction.
Awesome.
Basically, I've said this stuff before in interviews and other things, but I had always had a vision to become a writer and write books. And I'd always kind of envisioned myself an older person, like a senior, maybe retired or whatnot. But when I first started my company in 2011, obviously the work wasn't as steady as it is now. And I had those first few winters off, and I thought, why not start writing while I'm off in the winter? So it's kind of a blessing in that regard that I was able to focus on the writing, and that's sort of what kind of culminated and snowballed from that idea of being off of construction, being able to fill my time and be creative in other ways. This book was actually the first one that I wrote that very first year that I started my company, was off. I've since written anywhere between 10 and 15, I'm not sure. I don't like to keep too much track, and that varies from short stories to novelettes, novellas, and full length. This is a full length. But yeah, I ramble, cool. As you can see.
Oh, I love it. Because
I don't even remember the question.
I love it. Well, it's better to be natural.
Yeah. She's hitting me up live. I haven't done any homework. So.
Actually, that's a really great backstory, and it's good to know that you have written so much. So I'm really happy about that.
I really enjoy it. It became to where with my company that I was able to sort of save and take my winters off by choice. So now when I write in the winter, it's something I really look forward to.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And I usually write about 1 or 2 a winter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, I can't write that much.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I can't write that much, but that's awesome. You've definitely got a good imagination reading through this.
Well, and
I will
you know,
tell you.
and I don't something that's relevant. I don't pigeonhole myself in any way. Each book that I write is very different than the next. I sort of dabble in all the genres, because if I was to write similar stories one to the next, I'd probably get bored with it. So I tend to venture into other genres, which is fun.
Versatile. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool. Well, actually, that leads into my next question.
What was the first question? Tell me a bit
about yourself. You did that.
I did tell you a bit about myself.
Yeah, you did. So you may have answered that through this, but just to get an idea again, when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer? Like, were you young?
Yeah, very young.
Yeah. So you knew this. Did you know this before construction?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
My earliest memory of that was when I was about 5, 6.
Awesome.
I remember writing 3 short stories that, if I had them now, were probably just a mass gibberish, right?
Yeah.
But I do remember writing 3. I remember hiding them under my bed. I remember being afraid if anybody were to find them. The fact that I write now was a secret until it had to be exposed.
Yeah.
And so at a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I think I had a knack for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm super duper talented with writing.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think where I flourish is my imagination.
Yes.
I'm definitely not a technically sound writer, I don't think, but I mean, other people can be the judge of that. But yeah, it was a very young age, and like I said, as I got older, I always gravitated to English classes and things, and I sort of had it in the back of my mind that I would eventually do it. It just happened a little sooner than I thought, even though the dream started very young.
Yeah.
As I got older, I pictured myself much older. So it's funny, things happen in strange ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It never happens the way you want it.
Yeah,
But you eventually get to where you should be.
Yeah,
I think.
exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to sway from my own question, and I'm going to ask you if there was a writer or an author that influenced you, and who your favorite one is. Like currently, like, are you reading something currently? Are you like, even back then, like.
Right. You know, I always enjoyed old writers and old literature, like last century or century before. I like a lot of Poe and Lovecraft. I like currently. I mean, who isn't into Stephen King? I love Stephen King. There's a author called Cormac McCarthy that I really like. You might know their movie. There's a movie, No Country for Old Men and The Road.
That's a great movie.
I like the darker side of literature and of books, but I certainly can dabble in some of the lighter stuff. But yeah, I think that I'm definitely influenced by writers of a bygone era for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you've answered this question. I said, what is your work schedule like when you're writing? So you actually did go into that, so I'm going to skip that.
Yeah, it's 3/4. It's 3/4 construction, and a quarter of the year is writing. And when I'm doing either, I don't really do I don't go cross.
So you don't overlap?
No.
Oh, really?
No, not at all.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I don't want one to suffer from the other.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
yeah.
and if I get caught up with both at the same time, it gets a little wonky.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah.
What would you say is your writing quirk? Like, do you have a quirk when you're writing?
Give me an example.
An example.
I think I might have. I think I
myself.
might have a few.
So if I'm writing, my quirk probably would be just like your basic writer stuff, biting and whatnot, and trying to think of what I should say. But then I'll go back and I'll correct it too. But when I write, it's my feelings, right? So I have like 15 journals.
Oh, nice.
Well, more than, because I've been writing
That's
10.
amazing.
But I do weird things. Like I'll go back and I'll read it and I'm like, well, that can't be correct. But it is in the moment. So that would probably be my quirk, just never being good enough, I guess.
Yeah. I definitely like to put the pencil in my mouth when I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I bite on it.
Yeah.
I don't know that this would be a quirk or not, but I have to write pencil to paper. I can't do pen, and I can't do keyboard.
Oh, that's definitely quirky.
So
That's a big quirk.
I go through a lot of
Yeah.
pencils. Like I can sit down in a night and like eat pencils up.
Yeah.
And I don't go back and touch any mistake at all. I do after in the editing process. I find that, like you, in the moment you get a sort of emotion or perspective that you otherwise wouldn't if you edit it too soon. So I like to actually leave it.
Right.
And then give it a second thought, because I think that, like, I don't know how you journal, but I write so quickly
Yes. It's
that
very fast.
that
Yeah.
I don't want to undermine an instinctual idea by going and scratching out so quick. I want to go back and see it after, and then be cast judgment on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, quirks. Just that it has to be pencil and paper, and I definitely chew on pencil.
The things we find out.
Yeah.
Actually, it's good that you have the pencil to paper quirk, because pencil does last longer, than pen in the long run. So like 100 years from now, pencil can last, but pen can't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's a good quirk to have.
That's very cool.
Yep.
I just like the feel of it too. It just flows better, I
It
find.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to only write in pencil. I don't anymore. I just write with what I can find, but
Right.
I used to only write in pencil for that
Right.
reason, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you get published and what process, I guess? Like, what was the process for you to get published?
So,
How did it happen, I guess?
right. So, I'll try and keep it short. When I wrote this, it was just to see if I could for myself.
Right.
And once I found out that I could write a story from beginning to end,
Yeah.
I then, in the next book, challenged myself. Like, this book's pretty watered down in that there's only a few characters and there's only a few settings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my next book, I went like thousands of characters, hundreds of years, tens and 20 settings. And once I started to build a confidence up in what I was writing, I decided to start shopping it to publishers.
Right.
My vision at first was only to write it for myself, and maybe my family would find it later or something like that. Nostalgic, it'd be on a shelf or something.
Yeah.
But once I started to get confident, I started to submit it to publishers. My mother was a published poet in her day, and so she said, like, no, submit where you can, when you can, which
Yeah.
inspired me to do that. So about 5 years went by. So I wrote that in the winter of 11, and in spring 2017, I finally was offered a contract by a traditional publisher in Britain, and I work with their New York City division, and I actually took a long time to decide because it's my first go around. You want to have a good publisher supporting you.
That's right.
And it's a big contract, it's not little.
Yeah.
So I sat on that for a while, I read it through.
Yeah.
Not that I had anybody else to choose from, but you just want to be sure.
Yeah.
I actually, while I was assessing their contract, was offered another one
Oh, wow.
for a different story. But the other story is a short story. It would have been so small and thin that I wanted to give the market, the readership, something longer. So that's why ultimately the other contract offer made me kind of push me in the direction of this contract offer and appreciate it more for what it was. And it ended up turning out that it was a good decision. They're a very good publisher for me. They're a small press, but they do a lot of promotion, and it's selling well and it's being reviewed well and,
It is, yeah.
and things like that. So.
Yeah.
So it all worked out in that regard. But there was about 5 years. There was about a year where I didn't do anything with it. I was a bit shy, I think.
Yeah.
And then about 5 years of rejections, which I kept them all. I think I have about 60.
Yeah.
And and then I was finally offered a contract. So we went with it. Like I signed the contract in April 2017,
Right.
and I didn't even. It wasn't even published till winter 19.
Right.
That's because I took so long to decide. Like I just didn't know, is this the right fit?
That's right.
And I also didn't really understand the business side of things. I just thought if I say, okay, let's go, it's out the next day, and it's just not the case. So
That's right.
it was about like a year and a half of me deciding, and then another like year and a bit of them and I editing it for publication. So now that I know what I know, next book I'll want to get out really fast. I'll just deal with it rather than let it sit there.
Right.
Because I've grown and I have experience with the business, so
That's right.
I'll understand not to wait on that. As it turns out, everything happens for a reason, so I don't regret the way it happened. But if I had have pushed it out in 17, I would have beat COVID.
Right.
And now with COVID, there was a lot of cancellations and things. There was talks for a TV spot. There was a lot of signings that were canceled, and everything's sort of on pause now. But like I said, everything happens for a reason. So I've now forgotten your question officially, the original question.
So do I. It's okay.
That's awful. What was it?
I think that's a different one. One second. Oh, how did you get published? What process did you take?
Yeah. And I can speak.
I think it's better to be natural anyway.
Absolutely. I ramble. I know you ramble.
Oh, I totally ramble.
I've seen the videos.
It's a good mix.
But you know, I can speak a bit on the process just quickly too. Like, I started out snail mailing submissions, which was daunting, to mail something that's costly and big across the world to somewhere where you don't even know if you're going to get it back. Now it's very much more electronic. So you just online submit everything.
Oh, that's cool.
But I actually was the tail end of the snail mail generation of authors, and so like it was a long process. 5 years probably sounds small for somebody who's never been published or still working on it decades later. But it was a long, grueling, 4 or 5 years of waiting on snail mail, waiting on rejections, finally getting into the online submitting, and yeah, that's kind of the process. You just got to pound the pavement is what they say, and you kind of can't quit. Like I didn't, once I started saturating the market with my manuscript, I just did not stop. Like there wasn't one day that it wasn't somewhere.
That's right.
Whether it was this one or another story, like I had to completely keep on it. Now, one thing, since this was published in December 19, I haven't submitted anything, and I've written new things too. So the publisher has what's called first refusal. So if I want to shop anything new, they get this first glance, and they either take it or pass.
Right.
If they pass, then that's free to the open market again, and I get to shop it under a new resume. And a lot of the bigger presses won't look at an author unless they either have an agent or have been previously published. And now I've been previously published,
Right.
so I don't mind if they pass to explore the open market with a new resume, with a new work.
That's
a new
right.
piece.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's a bit about the process in my
It's an interesting
my
process,
experience.
actually.
Yeah, it's just that you have to just never quit. I don't believe that this book has anything that any others don't, and I'm sure there's a lot of great books that are hiding under beds or in desks where the authors have just given up, or they're taking their time. And like, I mean, if I could give any advice to anybody looking for publication, it would just be to just like not stop, not waste any time, because it's not, in my experience, I think that it's not necessarily about the book or the story, but just so much as is aligning the timing with a publisher.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe a bit in the times too, what people are looking for.
Of course,
Because it changes.
a little bit of both, but I do think that it's not to be disregarded that a lot of it is time. I think I just had good timing. I kind of look. Well, they say so. It's getting reviewed good, but I look back on it and I kind of cringe a little bit, only because I've grown so much. This is like 12 books ago for me, so
that's right.
So I get a little shaky on it, but I mean, other people wouldn't know any different, but
that's right. Well, they're looking forward to the next book, Mike.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's true. So I'm going to ask this question in my own way, because I noticed in the book, especially, I have it marked. There's a lot of history. Yeah. And I was curious if you were a history buff.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because I was like, wow, that's.
Well, I shouldn't say a lot.
So
I should say a little. It's probably a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love history. I mean, there's the one chapter, I know the one you're talking about, where I go back.
I marked it. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of I was sharpening my chops on that chapter. I have other stories. There's a whole book that I've written set in 16th century, and oh my God, the research on that, because it's the whole thing is in the 16th century.
That's right.
And that really shows, my passion for history. Yeah. But yeah, there is a chapter in there, and it's funny you mention that, because that chapter is different than any other in the book.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
And
it was a little unexpected when I got in there. I was like, oh wow.
It's like a different book.
That was really cool. So yeah, I noticed that, and then I got curious about history and if that's how you get your information and your ideas and where your imagination flows into. Because that made a lot of sense when I got to that chapter. I was like, that just cleared like a lot of thoughts for me.
I think I'm an old soul, and it probably showed in that chapter.
For sure.
And like I said, that set me up to give me enough confidence in other stories where I could write more than a chapter in that basis. I could just kind of go with it. Like I said, there's a whole story set in another time, which is a very hard thing to do.
Yes.
Because you have to be accurate, because if it gets the exposure that you're after, it would be scrutinized. So you don't want to mess up. Whereas I've written a fantasy too, actually, and anything goes with that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot more fun, and
Yeah.
it feels a little like less like work, but yes, history.
It was
yes.
interesting. Yeah, I was like, I bet he knows a lot of history.
I do. You're right.
Because I like history too.
Yeah.
But I would need to brush up on a lot of things. But I used to read a lot of history.
Yeah, nice.
And I was just like, wow, that was really cool. Like,
Me too. It's funny. You
like-
asked me, and I said a little bit, and then I go, no, it's a lot. What am I talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, because it's interesting.
It's
and
very
it can be
interesting.
like, and it's all in how you read it too. Sometimes it can be boring, and I'm like, oh, geez. But, but like,
if you have a passion for it and it's not boring. I remember
That's right.
I read stuff now that I would have found boring when I was in school though.
Yeah.
And now I read it, I'm like, man,
yeah,
this was
it's funny,
awesome.
eh? Yeah. So that was my curiosity. Let me just pick here. I think it's better just to change it. Did anything surprise you writing your book? Like about yourself, about the process, about how you write? Was there any surprises for you?
There was a lot of surprises. Right away, just that I could do it as quickly as I can. Like I do it very quick.
Right.
Very quick. Like I actually get like swimmer's elbow and stuff, and it's like people have to be like, you haven't drank, you haven't eaten, like you
Yeah.
need to stop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get like possessed. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
Other surprises were sort of like, I guess sort of how you can link one thing to something unforeseen. How could I explain this? Like, actually, I think that I could probably give a bit of advice even. When you're writing, I didn't expect how many other ideas open up for you as you go.
Yeah.
So I may start writing a chapter and I don't even know where it's going to go, but as I'm writing it, things just open up for themselves. I think
cool.
people writing a lot of times that I see on social media talk about how they're uninspired or they have no ideas, they want to write but they don't know what to write about, and I think that if they only knew, and surprisingly enough to me, that if you just kind of start,
Yeah.
you're almost taken
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
Like you get
pre-plan.
involved.
Yeah, I didn't pre-plan this book at all. Like,
Yeah.
and most of what I write, I don't. Like, as you're reading it, I was writing it the same way. Like, I was shocked when certain things would happen, and like almost like displeased, and like, oh my god, like. But
Yeah.
if you just allow yourself to write, you'd be surprised where you'll be taken almost.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great.
And that surprised me because I actually went in thinking like, shit, I better have a plan, but I'll see
Yeah.
what I can do. And
Yeah.
because this book worked so well, I actually have became a writer that I actually don't pre-plan anymore. The only time I do is if it has to be historically accurate.
Right. Well, that would be really scary for me to make things so accurate like
Yeah.
that. And I actually thought, especially in the beginning of that chapter, it was very accurate. It was really awesome. Anyway.
Cool.
Also.
There
I
were
was
other
thinking-
surprises that were in my head, but I
Yeah.
lost them. If they come back, I'll.
Yeah, just
discuss.
mention them. Just mention. I'm not even following this anymore because I have my own questions.
It's good. It's good.
Anyway, when I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if these are parts of his personality.
Okay.
And so, like each man
Seven,
has
yeah.
their own personality,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, I wonder if these are parts of himself that he sees.
Yeah. You know, that's actually.
I don't know if that's too personal.
No,
but
no.
that was my thought reading. the
Yeah.
book, right? But it could just be because I've talked to you. I know you, so. I
No,
don't know.
that actually reminded me of that reminded me of what I was going to say. A surprise that happened was, like, I just wanted to make 7 guys that they actually all are similar,
Mhm.
but they like as far as where they are in life, but they all have different personality
That's
traits
right.
for sure. And I just wrote them for that. What surprised me later in the editing process and reading it is I'm going, man, these guys kind of are like me. This guy has this and that's like me, and this guy has this
Yeah.
and that's like me. So that kind of happened. It was either by accident or subliminal.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was a surprise too because I can extend on that. What happens is you get so comfortable in writing. I imagine this is like journaling, that you're definitely pouring your emotion into it,
Oh,
and you don't even realize it.
That's
So then I'd go back and I'd be like, oh my god, that's I'm almost vulnerable for having had shared that.
Yeah.
But but because it's fiction, it's a little bit disguised.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of me in it,
Yeah.
but I wasn't aware of that as I was writing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to read because each character had like a part of your personality in there, and I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. I wonder if you did that on purpose or if that
I
was
didn't, but you know, if
like,
I
it
was
was
to,
awesome.
if I was to go back, I would totally probably take advantage of that.
Yeah.
There's a prequel to this book unpublished.
Yes, I
And-
was gonna ask that too.
And I don't know if I'd probably spoil if I talk too much about it for anybody who ever reads it, but it's a whole new 7 men,
Right.
and it's the villain and his group when he had one, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And it's 30 years before this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I wrote that in 2019, and I had written so many things between this and that, that to me it's a far superior novel. It actually shows my growth because, like I said, there's about 10 in between the two. And I was able to apply to the prequel all the things that I wish I had been able to do in this one, if that makes any sense.
That does.
So
yeah,
it's a little more poignant in that regard. If you
Yeah.
read it, you'll know what I mean, and you'll know. But so yeah,
Yeah, I thought so.
it happens by accident though,
It
and you
does.
feel a little vulnerable for it too.
Yeah.
Like it's a funny thing. You can become shy if somebody says like what you're saying to me now makes me a little
I'm
shy
sorry.
about it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, but it's definitely bound to happen, and I think that probably is true for a lot of authors. It just
think
happens.
so.
It's almost like journaling, but fiction. Like you're gonna find undertones of who you are, what you feel, for
It's
sure.
true, yeah, but I appreciate it because I think it's really interesting to, like when I was reading it, because you see Hearts of Men, and a lot of people think toughness, right?
Yeah.
But you did show a vulnerability in the characters, like anxiety and fear and things like that. And in all honesty, it's refreshing to see that from a male point of view.
Oh, nice.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because I am a woman and I'm also very emotional and I think things through. So for me to see that was like, wow, that's actually really brave, in my opinion. So if that makes you feel any better.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's nice to read. So
That's good. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Contrary to that point, I would imagine, I would hope that somebody wouldn't be turned off for that very same reason.
no, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because I wondered about, like, because it's not an action movie, it's not an action book. This is real. This is
Yeah.
like what would happen if this were real.
That's
and,
right.
And
Yeah.
real life isn't easy.
No, it's
So
not.
there's no BS. This is like stripped down to the screws. This is
That's
absolutely
right.
real, and I wanted to show that.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd be taking a chance if I was to do that. There's a vulnerability there.
Yep.
But I appreciate that you appreciate that because I think that matters. I think that there's enough art that is fake, and I wanted to just show
Something.
realness, substance, grit.
Yeah.
And that probably is true in a lot of things that I write. I have stuff that's a little less deep and almost comedic
Yeah.
at times, where it's a little more light. This was definitely like it was pretty real as it gets. I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. I thought so too, and I actually definitely appreciate it, and I think anyone would.
I love that.
Whether you're male or female or anything,
Yeah.
I think anyone would because it still has that survival
Right.
instinct, right? In all of the men, right up until the end, and I don't want to spoil it either
Yeah.
because I've read it, so
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything about the characters.
And you know
but-
the prequel, because I've already sort of explored the depths of man's vulnerability in that position.
Yeah.
I don't do that so much in the prequel
Mhm.
because I don't want to bore anybody either.
Right.
And about half the story is actually from the other perspective, the hunters.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a much different book. Like it's not more of the same.
Right.
But at the same time, that may make the reader appreciate this more because you'll have this over here that's now
Mhm.
now it's all revealed and we can go a little faster.
That's
Whereas this was more of a what's going on, how do they feel,
Yeah.
how would I feel.
Yep.
So I contrasted the two because you don't want to. I would imagine you don't want to. What I hate is in a sequel or a series is when it's just more of the same, and
Right.
and I did not do that.
That's awesome. I would read that.
I hope it gets published one day,
It
and
will.
you can read it.
It will, everybody.
Which,
I
by the
know
way,
it.
Which, by the way, I'll add to that something. When, in my experience, and I don't know how other writers are, but in my experience, when you write a story, it's almost as if it doesn't exist unless somebody else can experience it too.
That's right.
So for so long, well, 5 years, these guys were in the dark, almost like pining to like live and be exposed to whoever can share it and sharing that emotion with them. So it's funny, you reading it and appreciating it, and somebody else reading it and appreciating it. Like every time it's read, it's almost like these guys get to live again.
That's right.
Over and over.
And the best part about the characters too is that whoever is reading it, you're gonna reflect on your own personality, right? Like I pick up on those things because that's who I am. But someone else reading it might only pick up on the survival aspect of it, where I was like all about the psychology and the
and me
everything,
too.
Right? So other people will read it differently because it's all perspective.
Art is subjective.
That's
absolutely.
right. Yeah. So I think it really works well with every type of personality.
So these guys in my prequel are like begging to be alive, like to live, and I hope they do because these guys got their shot.
They do too.
You know, no pun intended.
We want these other men to
Did you have a favorite character or no?
Joe.
Joe.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was my favorite, I think, because he was a little more daring, but still fearful.
Right. No spoilers.
I don't want to spoil it, but he was my favorite. He was more like what I wish I could be, but I was more like the other characters. But I am more like the other characters. I'm like frightened of everything, but he was more like what I wish I could be.
Nice.
So he was my favorite character. So, yeah. Anyway.
I could speak a little more about that, but it would spoil. So.
Okay, let's not spoil it because we want people to read it. So, and we do have it here. Come and take it out. I'll take my sticky notes out because I have my own copies too.
Yeah. It lives here.
It's funny that you asked me that. That was my next question. Anyways, who was your favorite character?
Oh man, that's like picking a child.
I know.
Man. Do you know who I really liked that made surprise is Roebuck.
Yes.
Because he was like, I think he had it figured out and just tried to maintain positivity, even though he knew this isn't probably going to end well.
Yeah.
Plus, he had a nagging issue. I don't know if you noticed, but I could tell you that off camera. But there's something that happens. There's something that I allude to that has probably happened to him recently that he doesn't really touch on.
Right.
If we remember, I'll tell you what I mean after.
Okay.
So I have a camaraderie with him, but I love them all. Obviously Joe, obviously Charlie, Willie's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think.
Hopefully
he
too.
was. I mean,
I think he is too. I was just really focused on Joe the
Yeah.
entire time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Unless he wasn't actually in the chapter,
yeah.
I definitely focused on him. But I did think he was really funny. So
Willie?
yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Just his speech, everything.
Yeah.
So
He just didn't care at
yeah.
all.
No,
He
he
was in
didn't.
it to
He was like
whatever.
Yeah. That was really interesting too, that someone could be in that position and be like that
He was
too.
just, he had to
But that's
screw,
a part of survival too.
he had to screw just a little loose.
Yeah,
But-
slightly.
But in his life, he needed that for, like you said, coping mechanism probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone has their own coping mechanism, and you showed that. So, is there anything else? I actually think that's it. Where can you purchase the book for people out there?
So many places. Indigo in Chapters, Amazon. There's the publisher, Austin Macaulay, Barnes and Noble. That'd be the states. There's like Target. Oh, that's another states. Waterstones. That's like England and Australia, I guess. So Indigo Chapters, Amazon, and the publisher would be
Awesome.
would be the main four.
There you go. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mike. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
What do we do
We're gonna
for
like.
the social?
Oh yeah, there we go. So Hearts of Men, you can take it out. Please go purchase it. Support Mike. It is a great book and a great read. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.